Hi guys, Irina here and welcome back to my channel where I review everything tech. In today's video, let's talk about this beautiful phone, the Xiaomi 12 Lite. I'll talk about all the pros and cons of this phone and share my experience with the Xiaomi 12 Lite, so let's begin. A few words about the design of this phone. The color of this particular unit is called light pink, and I would say this finish sometimes looks lavender, but at some angles it gives this really beautiful gradient. And honestly, sometimes I get distracted by it and can't stop playing with the colors of this phone. I really like how this phone feels in my hand. Its size, weight, and shape makes this phone really comfortable to hold. It's pretty lightweight and the flat edges of the frame make this phone feel very grippy. Speaking of the display of the Xiaomi 12 Lite, we have a 6.55-inch AMOLED dot display with Full HD Plus resolution and 120Hz refresh rate. And when it comes to display features, I would say all of them may seem familiar to you if you've ever used a Xiaomi phone. We get the sunlight mode that comes in handy when you're using your phone outdoors. Next, we have the reading mode to reduce eye strain. And also, you could adjust the colors of the display. You could choose between these options or completely customize it, adjusting the color gamut, the color space, saturation, contrast, and so on. And of course, it goes without saying that this phone has the dark mode and the automatic brightness. Speaking of brightness, I would say this phone is pretty good. Indoors, I usually don't go past 80%, and when I'm using this phone outdoors, of course, I use the max brightness and enable the sunlight mode. And I would say the brightness is not bad outdoors either. Keep in mind that you could always use the auto brightness, and this way you won't have to manually adjust the brightness level and enable the sunlight mode, since the phone will do all the job for you. The Xiaomi 12 Lite features the always-on display, and I personally love it and always enable it, even though it's an extra drain on battery life. And as usual, you could pick from a variety of different themes here. And speaking of the always-on display, you could enable Raise to Wake feature and double tap, which I've always found very helpful. When it comes to overall experience with this display, I don't really have any complaints. All the swipes feel very smooth, the display itself is pretty sharp, and the colors seem quite accurate. Next, let's talk about the camera setup and the camera performance of the Xiaomi 12 Lite. We have a triple camera, including the 108-megapixel main camera, an 8-megapixel ultra-wide camera, and a 2-megapixel macro camera. And also, there is a 32-megapixel front camera. I've already shown you guys all the camera modes and features in the camera app in my unboxing video. Check it out if you haven't already. But in this video, I want to talk about my actual experience with the camera on this phone and photos and videos you would get with the Xiaomi 12 Lite. So, as you can see, I've got pretty nice daylight photos with this phone. I would say when you use the main camera, the Xiaomi 12 Lite makes photos look slightly more saturated than it is in real life. However, when it comes to ultra-wide photos, for some reason your beautiful vivid shots turn gloomy and gray, and I would say the gray colors look exaggerated. Trust me, it didn't look that depressing in real life. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. With the main camera you get rather vivid photos, and with the ultra-wide camera you get gloomy looking photos. mind that the Xiaomi 12 Lite doesn't have a telephoto camera, so when you're zooming in, you wouldn't be able to get really sharp photos with the digital zoom, but I would say 2x and 3x zoom photos seem to be fine. And by the way, the maximum zoom on the Xiaomi 12 Lite is 10x. Of course, you can take portrait photos in the portrait mode, and by the way, I really like the portrait mode on this phone because the skin color and the overall colors look very natural and close to reality. Of course, you could make some adjustments before and after the portrait was taken, like changing the bokeh and adding filters and effects. When it comes to the front camera, I would say I got pretty good selfies with this phone in terms of skin colors and overall colors. They look very close to reality. Same thing when it comes to selfie videos, and as you can see, the video stabilization on the front camera is pretty good. Switching back to the rear camera, and speaking of videos, you can go up to 4K resolution and 60 frames per second. Just like the photos taken on the main camera, the videos look slightly more vivid and saturated than you would see with your own eyes. And switching to the ultra-wide camera, as you can see, once again, the colors turn kind of gray and gloomy. And I'm not saying it's terrible, but honestly, I wish the photos and especially videos were more consistent in terms of colors when you're switching between the cameras. Keep in mind that when you switch to the ultra-wide camera, you cannot shoot in 4K, you're limited to 1080p resolution. When it comes to video stabilization, as you can see, it's pretty good on the main camera as well as on the ultra-wide camera. Finally, let's talk about the photos and the videos taken in very low light. Of course, the Xiaomi 12 Lite has the night mode, and in general, I would say the night photos from this phone look pretty good. If I zoom into these photos, they look quite sharp. The only thing is that there are a lot of light glares in these photos, even though the lens was absolutely clean. And speaking of the night videos, taking videos in very low light is always challenging for any phone, and I would say the night videos from the Xiaomi 12 Lite look quite average. Definitely not the best night videos I've ever seen. The noise in the videos is pretty noticeable, and once again, the excessive amount of the light glares doesn't look nice in my opinion. Next, let's talk about the battery life. The Xiaomi 12 Lite has a 4300 mAh battery, and from my experience, the battery life is pretty good. With moderate use, this phone usually lasts me a whole day. And of course, with heavy use, you could drain this phone within several hours. I would say something between 6 to 7 hours. Speaking of charging features, this phone is very basic, so there is no wireless charging or reverse wireless charging. However, it's important to note that you get a 67-watt charger in the box with your Xiaomi 12 Lite, which is quite rare these days. Now let's talk about the speakers. We have dual speakers on this phone, and while these are not the loudest speakers on the market, I would say they're pretty good in terms of sound quality. This phone features Dolby Atmos, and just like on the other Xiaomi phones, you could adjust the sound in the equalizer. There is no 3.5mm headphone jack on this phone, but I don't think this is surprising in 2022. When it comes to security features, the Xiaomi 12 Lite has an in-display fingerprint sensor and the Face Unlock. Both work just fine. So far, I haven't had any problems with unlocking my phone, so no complaints here. But keep in mind that the face unlock on the Xiaomi 12 Lite is the least safe option. The Xiaomi 12 Lite is powered by Snapdragon 778G, which is unsurprisingly not the latest and greatest chip. But still, this particular unit with 6GB of RAM and 128GB of internal storage can easily handle some of the demanding games, and overall this phone feels quite snappy and the overall performance has been pretty smooth. At times I have some occasional hiccups on this phone, most of the time when I'm switching between the apps or closing the apps, but it doesn't happen often, so I cannot say that this has been an issue. Keep in mind that there are other storage configurations available, but it will depend on the region. The starting price of this phone is $400. And yes, as a mid-tier phone, the Xiaomi 12 Lite has some limitations. You won't get some features on this phone like you would if you went for a more expensive Xiaomi 12 Pro, but at the same time, for this amount of money, you get a pretty decent camera setup, a good battery life, and overall, I must say I've had a very positive experience with this phone. Let me know what you think, guys. Come and say hi in the comments. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one.